प्रो है हो गया
A very warm good morning to all of you. We are going to start the Viva of Priyam Singh. Supervisor is Dr. D.N. Sinha. He is the head of the Department of English, BN College.
Ma'am, there is echo of your voice.
Echo ho raha hai.
It seems you have joined using two different systems actually. So, I think two systems are adjacent, that's why.
The external examiner is Dr. Nagendra Kumar. He is professor in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee. And we are privileged to have with us the Dean, Faculty of Humanities, Professor Rajesh Kumar Singh. Now I request Dr. Ramhit Chaupal to read the reports of the experts on the thesis of Priyam Singh.
Thank you, ma'am. There are three reports of the research scholar Priyam Singh. So the first report, I am starting with the report by Professor D.N. Sinha, Professor and Head Department of English, BN College, Patna University. And he says, the present Ph.D. thesis entitled Complex Interplay Between Heresy and Hegemony in Reception of Select Literary Texts in India is a brilliant literary contribution to English language and literature. And he goes on to describe, discuss the major things that is there in the chapters. And he says in the first chapter, the book of Trike and archival analysis and reception. The researcher begins with a relevant discussion on the age-old relation of religion and state, which enables a structural manner of control over publication and circulation of books in India. In the present the knowledge of the reader in India, the same must go 6 important parameters to avoid the misrepresentation of religious matters among the readers of the books in controversy. The third chapter has presented the reader's theory of assessment in both qualitative and quantitative manner. The chapter 4 begins with an enunciation of the expansion of the agora of public space due to the formation of various digital formats like television, social media, news outlets, and their flashes, etc. Chapter 5, normalizing the radical space, postmodernist, post-truth world, discusses how close in postmodernism is to post-colonialism, as both posts actually define the multiplicity of views of the readers in India. Chapter 6, hegemonic state of welfare state, drawing inference. The research scholar has presented the picture, the noise in the public sphere and how they are kept either prevailing or are kept silent by the readers in general. And chapter 7, concludes the basic difference between blasphemy and heresy as the time progressed and the nation became independent. And finally, he says that overall, the present PhD thesis is of high standard, and I do hereby recommend the award of the PhD degree to Priyam Singh after her satisfactory performance in open PhD Viva-Voce to be conducted by Patna University. The second report I am going to read is by Pramod Kumar Singh, professor in the Department of English, Sakaldiha PG College, Sakaldiha, Chandoli, UP. And he says that he has gone through the research chapters very minutely, and he says the first chapter followed by the bibliography at the end. The first chapter introduces the topic with review of literature and the research gap which the researcher wants to fill with a present thesis. There is a clear-cut hypothesis that there is relegation of the role of organic intellectuals and a state hegemony prevails. Chapter 2 and 3 deal with the selected text which offended the religious sentiments of the people, due to which the government had to ban such texts. Chapter 4 deals with the role of the intellectuals and discusses the bifurcation not just of the traditional and organic intellectuals, but also the hegemonic, counter-hegemonic, and the academic and public intellectuals. The fifth chapter deals with a basic truth about the parallel growth of India and the emerging ideas of whether India wears a postmodern cloak or not. Chapter 6 is an inference to the question of whether we can define the Indian state as hegemonic or welfare in nature. Chapter 7 concludes the ideas discussed in earlier chapters. The researcher contrasts heresy with the idea of blasphemy and concludes that modern day heresy is the result of upsetting cultural beliefs and practices which may or may not include blasphemy. And he says, concluding his report, he says, the thesis is well prepared. The researcher has explored the ideas in depth and elaborated her points with clear objection. And he also, finally, he also recommend that the PhD degree be awarded to the research scholar Priyam Singh after the Viva-Voce examination. And the third report I am going to read is by Professor Nagendra Kumar, Professor, Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee. And Sir says, the thesis entitled Complex Interplay Between Heresy and Hegemony in Reception of Select Literary Texts in India is a relevant and timely intervention in the ongoing debates on the censorship in contemporary social, political, and cultural scenarios in India. This well-conceived thesis has studied a complex issue with a long history involving a delicate balance between freedom of expression, legal framework, and socio-political implications. The justification for banning books often revolve around issues such as public order, morality, obscenity, religious sensitivities, etc. And they frequently lead to the stifling of dissent, silencing the marginalized voices, and curtailing of creative expressions. The thesis demonstrates the profound impact of book bans on a vibrant democracy like India and expounds on the need for a more nuanced approach, prioritizing open dialogue and critical engagement. The complex and multifaceted relationship between heresy and hegemony is often explored in the context of social and political power. Heresy in the context of religion often refers to expressions and actions deviating from established doctrines and is a kind of resistance to the hegemonic power of dominant group or the state. On the other hand, heresy is used as a tool by the hegemonic power, which often uses the threat of heresy to suppress dissent and shape its ideology. In the context of banning of books, historically, books have been banned for being heretical, challenging religious orthodoxy or prevailing moral beliefs. Hegemony, on the other hand, as the cultural dominance of a ruling class or ideology, has also contributed to the banning or censoring of books. Thus, the investigation of censorship of books in the context of heresy and hegemony is relevant and persuasive one in the evolving scenario of increasing politicization of the topic. The thesis has attempted to investigate the various modalities at work behind the reception of concerned certain texts, taking into account the interplay between heresy and hegemony. The researcher has taken into account the relationship between religion, law, democracy, and public sentiment while discussing the ban or censorship regarding the text taken for study. The extensive corpus of literature this thesis has consulted is demonstration of the strong understanding of the topic by the researcher. The discussion on the banned books containing the representations of Hinduism and the epic Ramayana from a plethora of perspectives is the most interesting part of the thesis. I am particularly impressed that the thesis has also taken into account the reader's role in shaping the dialogue. And he says, the lens of reader response theory used in the argumentation gives a fresh perspective on the topic and demonstrates the work's original contribution to the field. And says, this important work is a testament to the researcher's unwavering dedication, hard work, and commitment to the work. The meticulous and extensive research conducted by the research is truly impressive. And sir, I also put certain questions, but and then I'm coming to the concluding part. And he also finally recommend the thesis for awarding a PhD a degree in English subject to the successful defense during the Viva-Voce examination. So these were the 3 reports, and all the reports are in favor of the research scholar Priyam Singh. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ramhit Chopal. Now I request Priyam Singh to start her presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, esteemed professors, the external, Dr. Nagendra Kumar, and all my amiable friends and learners of literature here today. I'm extremely grateful for your presence today for the presentation of my Ph.D. Viva-Voce. I shall now begin. The topic of my thesis is complex interplay between heresy and hegemony in the reception of select literary texts in India. And the chapter 1 discusses the matrix of the relationship between religion and state that formed the basis of initial proscription of books. And it discusses the research objectives and the statement of problems, which are as follows. It fills the gap, or it intends to fill the gap of literary criticism in the context of Indian literary texts, and especially with respect to a reference to the reception theory. It analyzes the role of state in censorship, something that we easily allocate and casually put a blame on. So we actually put a great emphasis in investigating the role of the state in this reception. It also tries to analyze the genesis of herd sentiments, because herd sentiments is the reason that has been given for the need to ban certain books. Obviously, there are specific reasons like obscenity, like misrepresentation of religion, like defamatory elements in the text, but mainly what is the genesis? Where does this hurt actually derive from? And lastly, and most importantly, it looks at the readership levels of the readers in India who put up a challenge, who put up a resistance to the publication and the circulation of such books. So these are my problems related to the research and that I intend to explore. I explore in all the chapters. The hypothesis that I explore, so thank you. So there were 3 hypotheses in this research work. There was one about the complacency or the satisfaction that the state has, or the state apparatus has towards the protection of freedom of speech. And the finding is that the state intends to protect all the democratic rights through its various apparatuses, be it the judiciary, through the executive, through the legislature. But there are certain compulsions that the state faces, and many times there is a sense of lethargy in the way they enact the steps. It takes a lot more time. In chapter 4.
You are not audible, Priyam.
It was a minor disruption. Yes. Yes. Sir, am I audible now?
You are audible now, yes.
Okay. The second hypothesis is about the level of readership and the kind of engagement that readers do with the texts that have been taken under study. And this we had taken as a hypothesis that the engagement is superficial, and this has been proven through chapter 3, where a quantitative analysis has also been done through questionnaire and stratified random sampling, and by using the K-fold methodology to find statistically significant results. So we have found that the readership is low, even the level of awareness is low. So this hypothesis has been proven that the readership actually is superficial, and to a large extent, it can be attributed to visual mediums and the digital mediums that have come to play. Hypothesis number 3 is that is there a relegation or backtracking of the organic intellectual in the presence of the state? And this is also proven to be completely true. because under the pressure of the state and the requirements of a tenured job, the requirements of staying in a particular department and staying relevant in a particular department, there are few academics who actually speak up and take a stand with regard to the the texts that quote controversy. There are people who speak, but they are usually muffled and very few. So the role of the intellectuals is pretty much there in society, but they are not taking the same stand as they generally would. So these are my three hypotheses and the position of the hypothesis, the result finding, and the status. Objectives. The objective was to study the genesis of herd sentiments. Where exactly does it arise from? And we look at those in the upcoming chapters. The role of the public intellectuals, various kinds of intellectuals, like the critical intellectual, the public intellectual, the various kinds of intellectuals, and the reading habits. And we also look at another concept, which is the truth conditional semantics, where truth conditions are attributed today and given more emphasis and meaning and focus rather than the actual truth itself. So that's in chapter 3, and these are the objectives. Now, what is the literature survey? There are many more with regards to the survey, but some of them are here. So there was works read on film censorship, on gender and censorship by Viva-Voce. There's the text, the book on trial, fundamentalism and censorship in India. Girija Kumar, this is all in chronological order. And then Rajiv Dhawan, who wrote the book Publish and Be Damned, Censorship and Intolerance in India, 2008. South Asia, Cultural Regulation of Sedition Seduction. The Reader, the Writer and the State by Mini Chandra in 2017. War Over Words in 2019 by Dr. Devika Sethi. Art Attacks, Violence and Offense Taking in India in 2019 by Malvika Maheshwari. Sentiment, Politics and Censorship, The State of Hurt in 2021. And there are many Ph.D. and MPhil dissertations that I've also referred to, which we can refer to on the screen. All right. So in a summative manner, I'd talk about the various texts that we have taken. The first one is the Hindus and Alternative History. And the main concern here is a challenge to the Indian history in various ways. An analysis of this tells us that there are problems with the translation of the text. So Harvard professor Michael Witzer has also pointed out the discrepancies in the translation of the Sanskrit text by Doniger. So there is a translation problem. There is an evaluation, understanding and comprehension problem with respect to Doniger's text, but also there are certain elements in the text that we can appreciate because she talks about alternative history. She also talks about women taking certain positions. She talks about the different kinds of Brahmins, not necessarily elite, but also starving, and those who have a progressive thinking and are not constrictive of the roles of other aspects of hierarchies of the society. There's also the mention of the dancing girl statuette. And most importantly, because we are in Bihar, there's hardly any place where we see the history of Bihar being mentioned at a global level. So there is the discussion of the Mithila women and their paintings. And there is the discussion of the Hijras in Bihar signing a kind of memorandum of understanding with the government in trying to collect tax revenue in the historical times. So there is a great expanse, and yet there is a lot of resistance also because of certain elements of physical metaphors that are presented in the text. And those are related to the physical symbol of the Shiva Linga and so on. So there are lots of aspects. Now I move to the next text about Shivaji, Hindu king in Islamic India. Now, Shivaji is a very central warrior-like figure who gains importance in Maharashtra, who retains, in fact, importance, not just gains, but retains importance in every aspect in Maharashtra. And speaking anything against them, against Shivaji, has been a point of contention historically also. And the chapter will discuss the various scholars who have talked about it. Vidyadhar Date, who doesn't necessarily speak about all the good things about Shivaji, Govind Pansare, who questions whether Shivaji is actually a true Maratha. Baba Sahab Pundare, who emphasizes his Brahminical lineage. So, as we can see that there are some scholars who are stressing on his Brahminical lineage and the others who are stressing on his Maratha lineage or questioning it, right? Then there are people who have questioned him for the tax that he had imposed Chauthai, because of which that kind of writing, he lost his job. You know, you cannot question Shivaji in Maharashtra. That is the kind of impact. So when we say the presence or impact of the state, we do see. That is why I say my hypothesis of state's role has partially been proven. It has the compulsions to run and streamline a democracy, but it also has actually bent to the beck and call of people sometimes, and this is one of those instances. And then there's the Sambhaji Brigade, an extrajudicial element that went and ransacked the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Library in Pune, and which destroyed a lot of very old ancient manuscripts. So, just in the interest in the name and the requirement to grasp Shivaji as their very own, followed by Shivaji's role of a violent nature again. And so Maharashtra is actually a conflict zone towards trying to get the ownership of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. And these are the various scholars who talk about it. So you can see that the readers here actually, because my thesis talks about reception theory, well, and also it takes as the role of scholarly intellectuals and people. So we can see that there is a huge a say over here. I mean, not many texts generate this kind of reception, but this does, and there is a constant politics here that is going on. And in fact, it is not a question of whether Shivaji belongs to an Islamic India. That is actually completely done away with, but the question becomes here about whether he's a Brahmin or a Maratha. So these are politics related to the text and people responding to it. And in fact, then the question that arises is, what is the state doing about it? So there were 72 people who were indicted in this case of ransacking the library in Pune. And after 13 long years, the resolution to this case came. 4 of them died during this time period, and 68 of them were left scot-free because of lack of evidence. Now, that is, in a way, we can say that the state is complicit in conspicuously avoiding gathering of evidence of such a violent element taking place. So that is about Shivaji history. And then we have the resurgence of Pandyan history in 2013 by K. Senthil Kumar. He claims to belong to the Mallar community, which is equivalent to the Pandyas. So he wants a reclassification of the Mallar community into the hierarchy of caste. He wants to get the Pandyas position. And he's done 7 years of study and written the book. And although the book was banned, ultimately with the engagement of our Prime Minister and our Home Minister in 2021, the Mallars were actually granted the status of the Pandyas. So again, there is a politics, and the reception is, I mean, we can see that people are impacted where their own identity is concerned. So in this way, we are actually also quietly drawing out or deriving why the genesis of herd sentiments. People are trying to attain their identity through these texts also. All right. Then we look at 300 Ramayans. There are many tellings of the Ramayans, and in my questionnaire, in my empirical survey also, we found that most people agree. Now, this is very surprising, but most people agree that they have heard more than one telling of the Ramayana. They have heard not just the Valmiki Ramayan, they've not just seen that, but there are other tellings that they are aware of. So they understand that there can be various other tellings. But yes, they do have objection. India seems to be an orthopraxy nation. We are orthodox about our beliefs, so we do have a problem with a certain representation of religious or spiritual characters. But they do agree that several tellings are available. So in response, we can say that the readers don't necessarily have a problem. And in addition to that, if you look at the role of the scholars in the Academic Council in Delhi University, where this was discussed whether or not to remove the text from the syllabus, there also there were many scholars, although that's nothing compared to the total number of people present. So only 9 out of 200 academic council strong people actually dissented against and but now we are actually at the position where it is more important the order to remove the text. And therefore, the finding is text. In this text, we actually there was not particular data, but it was very clear from the side of read it.
I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not able to hear. Sound is not clear.
Staying silent.
Sound is not clear.
Again, and there was no clear objection on the part of the people. But I'm changing your mind. Just the absence of more information, which is very important.
Who is Priya
Reception.
Please mute. All others, please mute.
As a result of the reading. When reading is missing, that reception does not.
Is Priya Pandit?
Count. Yes, yes, sir. And I have so that is there. Then we look at satanic verses. Where we actually can associate it with the concept of the truth conditional semantics.
All those who have joined online are requested to
where,
mute.
More meaning.
Go for mute. They mute.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, please. Now it's audible. But yeah, in between, I was not able to make out anything.
Listening.
Because some people, they left their mics open, and so there was a lot of noise. Yeah, please continue. And I would not like you to make such a detailed chapter-wise presentation. I would appreciate if you can just talk about your findings. Well, I have gone through your thesis, so there is no need to be so detailed about it. Just talk about your, findings. so that we can take it from there and discuss.
Hello, am I audible now, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Be brief and pointed, okay?
All right. All
Yeah.
right. I'll be brief.
So straight away come to your findings.
Sir. Okay. So do I have 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All
Take
right.
your time.
So I'll sum up all the chapters in 5 minutes and the final research findings in another 5.
Fine.
Chapter 2. Yeah, thank you, sir. So basically, the first chapter was an extensive literature survey in general on the topic of heresy and hegemony and also specifically related to the text. Chapter 2 deals with what are the legal precedents internationally and nationally. And at the present moment, we have come to the conclusion that we look at community standards in order to decide whether a text is worthy of being restricted or not. But there have been questions raised about the community standard also in the form that who really defines what is the community standard. And that is one. And that is one factor related to obscenity trials. The other factor related to religious issues with the texts is, certain very important texts. I'll quickly name them. The Mubaya case in 1916 Allahabad actually talks about, makes the statement that even a true statement may outrage religious feelings. And that's a very pertinent question. So adding to that, the Nandakumar case and the Harnam Singh versus UP case actually talks about the fact that if Section 295A, which is of IPC, which is made as a preventive law to prevent any kind of mishap between various communities, even imposing that is not relenting the conflict, then what is the point? So it asks the government that imposes any kind of restriction or the person who wishes this kind of restriction to take place to actually put down the reasons for restriction so that the judge or the court can assess the application of mind. And this is very important because recently, in the most recent judgments, the court has talked about application of mind in the context of the story. So, I mean, way back in 1960s and 80s also, this point has been made, and it's high time now that the state legislature and the executive take this into account. And this is again one of the factors why I say my hypothesis related to the state is only partially proven because it is partially complicit in not taking proactive steps to address issues related to this. In this sense, I'd also like to say, like, the Freedom of Literature Bill was not really entertained in the Parliament. It was a private member bill, but it wasn't entertained in the Parliament. And in the S. Tamil Selvam case related to Perumal Murugan also, the Madras High Court had issued certain recommendations which were not taken in the true spirit. In fact, even with the coming of the new laws, I can wrap the legal factor here itself. But this is one of the true findings that after the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita has been enforced in 2024, July 1st, it has still not incorporated the suggestions made by our own arms of the state apparatus. In fact, it has incorporated the Roth judgment and the Miller judgment. So this is, although we were trying to do away with the colonial kind of law, we continue to actually hold on to colonial laws and not listen to our own state apparatuses. So these are the questions that are explored in the legal aspect related to obscenity and related to religious trials. Now I move to chapter 3, reader reception, and I will wrap this up quickly. So chapter 3 discusses reader reception theories, 4 or 5 of them: Rosenblatt transactional theory, Wolfgang Iser, the concept of actual and implied reader, Hans Robert Joss, Horizon of Expectation and Stanley Fish's interpretive community, and it emphasizes upon the various kinds of readers that are available in India. So one is a literate reader, one is a reader who is more advanced and can understand advanced vocabulary, one is even more advanced. So there is an average reader, a super reader, and an ideal reader. These kind of categories, who are maturer in level and can understand the different levels of understanding, the higher advanced levels of understanding. This chapter also talks about truth conditional semantics. I've already discussed it, so I will let it go. It also addresses one question, that research question that we'd begun with, which is the genesis of hurt. So the genesis of hurt over here is being given to not addressing the otherness that certain communities feel. If they feel othered, if they feel that they are not being given, forget about prominent position, even a basic recognition, then it is a matter of great hurt, and that psychologically plays. So like in the body, if there is a disease, there is a symptom that shows. Similarly, in the body politic of the state, this kind of a violent outburst of paroxysm is seen because there is lack of recognition at a very basic level of these communities, and that is why that sense of hurt is emerging. They're always sidelined, and that is psychological mess. So we cannot always say that hurt sentiments is actually something that you can do away with. It's something that you should not take seriously. It also addresses the literacy of people and the fact that in 2007, the Read India campaign was started. 2007, right? Not very many years from here. A Read India campaign was started so that better readership could be done. There's also empirical examination of the text and the readership, and it is found that the readership is quite low, although there is a lot of trust shown in the Indian judiciary, but the readership itself and even the awareness level is pretty low with regard to these texts. And whatever information they get through various media. There's also the role of publishers discussed here, where except for the Tamil Selvan case, in Perumal and Murugan case, most publishers have really bowed out. In fact, in Wendy Doniger's case, it was said that the Penguin publishers chickened out. So that's the discussion about the various elements of readership and their role. Chapter 4 is a discussion of all kinds of intellectuals. And it is said that any person who thinks, and we are following Gramsci here, Antonio Gramsci. So any kind of person who thinks is an intellectual, but the role of a public intellectual is different. A role of a public intellectual is to actually understand something better and communicate it to the larger public sphere. And that role is not being properly, discussed here in the context of these books. There's also this concept, which I found extremely impressive and entertaining, and I think very radical in today's time, where Giroux says, this theorist says, that people tend to question the very tough language that is used in certain texts, okay? And we seem to popularize plain speak, something that is very easy to read and all that, which is fine. But he says that if you need an in-depth understanding of something, you need to delve further, understand better, and communicate better, mediate better. So you cannot do away with the idea of tough reading, more mature and involved reading. We cannot become a society with lack of depth, but we are becoming one, which leads us, so I'll actually move to the 5th chapter, which then takes us to the concept of India becoming a postmodernist state, to this sense where we say the effect is seen more and cause less. You don't really know what is the cause, but the effect is seen. So we can see that we are becoming depthless. I will not say as a summary statement, but we find it easy to, to read about something rather than read something. So it's a more superficial reading. In that sense, I'm saying that the depth has lowered. Also, the kind of history we look at is through a lens of private temporality, rather than from a sense of factual understanding. So this sense of nostalgia and aestheticized form of history that we pay attention to, we also, because, something becomes popular, we commodify it, like, for example, hurt sentiments has almost become like a material concept if something like that happens, it has some tangible impact. So it has created a market of commodities. And for these reasons, we have definitely become a postmodern state. But then there are other reasons why we can say that we are not, because India cannot do away with history without that sense of a grand narrative about something. Grand narrative meaning one reason explaining why something has taken place. Without that reasoning, India is not willing to move ahead. So in that sense, we cannot say that we have become postmodernist. So it's somewhere in a liminal state, somewhere in between, where we do display certain aspects, and then there are those where we can completely say that we don't, because of the dynamics of market and the way people react to a sense of history. It's uncertain, it's flexible, it's dynamic, it is intertext. So we are also postmodern. So we are both. And that leads us to the question of how we are perhaps also entering a sphere where we can say post-truth. There is so much information available that there is exhaustion. There is so much facilitation of information. There's exhaustion about the idea of what really is the truth. What's there on the surface is what you consider to be the truth. It's rarely does one actually go and see that what is the real citation or the verifiable element from which a particular quote is coming. So in that sense, we have entered. We can say that we have entered an area of post-truth whether we don't know whether what we know is actually the truth or not. And it's not because we don't want to know it; it's because we don't want to go deeper. Okay. And there's also a sense of duplicity available. We react differently in front of different people in different situations. So that kind of duplicity also puts a question mark on what you consider to be the truth. There are no principled stands being taken. And in fact, we are using law as a rescue narrative. We are creating a principled distance, as Rajiv Dhawan said in Publish and Be Damned, that we are trying to take a principled distance from all these stands and, doing away with making a stand and just resolving the problem. This chapter, one more important point that it deals with, and then I end chapter 5, is the psychological hearing of the other. Okay, that leads to emotions of protest. So if you're othering people, not listening to them, not involving them, it is creating a sense of othering in them. And when they resonate, the more important, this point I've already mentioned, but the more important point is when you align with people who feel the same, then this is a concept that the researcher, that is me, has created. So it's a new concept that I have posited in the thesis, which is the concept of the protest organism. Okay, you become that protest organism because you identify the same feelings with different other people, and then you gather together and there is an outburst of emotions. So if there is that level of collective people who feel this way, then it is not something that can be casually pushed aside and must be taken into account. But then the readership still remains in question. It's just about identification. Then chapter 6, I move to chapter 6. It specifically interrogates the role of the state. It looks at the history of how India began as a welfare state after independence, because it was its role. It was the role of the state to take care of the complete country, the sovereign nation. And, therefore, there was a need to protect. But slowly, as we saw that there were scarcity of resources and welfare could only be provided to some. So because of this huge population that India is, this is a very significant factor, whether it be in terms of material resource, whether it be in terms of providing attention to them. Okay, that attitude of the state can only be for a certain set of people. So ultimately, as Florencia Mellon has said, that India is in a position where you can only reach a compromise equilibrium. So there are many people who would fight about something, be in a conflict to reach a certain position where they are recognized, where they are given better facilities and all that. So that and finally, the person who tops that conflict reaches the compromise equilibrium, and that is what leads to an integral state. So the state is trying, but it falters because of the huge complexity of the problem that India is. I move to the final chapter, conclusion, and this includes findings also. This actually explores after looking at all other aspects and modalities of the research that heresy today is actually not a question of committing something religiously wrong, but it is something that you find culturally unpalatable. Okay, it could be religion, it could be obscenity, it could be misrepresentation, it could be any other factor, but anything that you find culturally not admissible is what has become heresy today. And throughout India, you will find people who will say that they are upholders of Indian culture, and there is something wrong if you're not adhering to Indian culture. So that has really become the reason for the kind of protest against certain texts. So that is one idea that is discussed here. An interesting idea connected to this is discussed. It's very, very important, and this is a good finding on my part that earlier the church or the papal church and the pope would decide what is the correct thing, and that is why religion was the reason for heresy. Now, since culture is the reason for heresy, who's really deciding the culture? It is the media. It is the media that is most easily accessible. So media that is the most powerful. Media is deciding, and the law that is being created, that is being used, that is being referred to as a rescue narrative, that is being used. So law and media actually become two prominent elements, okay, on the basis of which a decision about what is heresy and what is not heresy is decided. What becomes popular, what is not popular, what is populism, and what is actually sovereign. So these things are decided by these two elements. We also recognize towards the end that there is an intellectual gap in the thought process between what the writer is trying to say and what the intellectuals in the society, irrespective of critical or public or normal, basic social intellectuals are talking about, irrespective of what kind of people we are, there is a thought gap. And that is why I said Girox's idea that we need to indulge at a deeper level of the language also is significant. We cannot always popularize plain speak. All right. And finally, there's a very new concept which can be a scope as well as a limitation and also an initiation in this chapter, which is the entry of the digital humanities and the concept of distant reading by Frank. So as we have realized through this entire thesis, that readership level is low, right? And a mature readership level is even more low. Therefore, the concept of digital humanities or distant reading, where you do not put only a certain number of texts under the canon under your study, but also a whole gamut, a century full of people, of writers who you may never know of also, and study it digitally, use the technological resources to do a certain level of superficial reading so that you can get a better assessment. Just reading 10 texts is not enough. 10,000 would be a better case, and that is not humanly possible. That's only possible through distant reading. So I introduced the concept of distant reading, and it would be explored to N level because it's just the beginning. So I understand that readership, no matter what we try to do, there's only going to be a small coterie of people who are going to deeply engage with the text. And it's now the time to move ahead and also be inclusive of the idea of distant reading. So that is perhaps one answer to how readership and reception can be taken place of. And this is where I end my discussion of the entire thesis. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyam. Now I request the expert, Dr. Nagendra Kumar, to put questions to Priyam Singh. Sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Priyam, thank you very much for your detailed presentation of your work. I found your approach very, very impressive, and since you have done a very detailed study, and there is also a renewed interest, given that we have entered an era where we find that the curriculum in India is being revised, And there are always clamors from different sections that adequate representation is denied to them, or there is some kind of effort on the part of policymakers or those in power to question certain kind of history and to promote another kind of narrative. So I believe that has certainly given us a new reason, a renewed reason to look into this matter. Although historically we have seen that this is something which is nothing new. There has always been a keen tussle for power, and writing. I believe we were always told that pain is mightier than the sword. That means you capture the mind of the people and you capture them whole. And if you just capture their body, you don't them in parts. So, writing being that influential, which captures the mind of the people, certainly has potential to affect the people more than anything else. And that is the reason, historically, there have been efforts on silencing certain kind of voices. So, like the entire history, if we look at history as such, we'll find European history is full of such, censorship and sanctions. And even this was true of a period when the books were not published. But even then, if somebody is speaking against the power, is sanctioned and put behind the bars. So that was also a kind of censorship. Then again, a classic case is this Joan of Arc. You might have gone through that play by G. Shaw, and we find that like Joan of Arc is charged with heresy because he's talking against the church or against the prevailing norms. So this censorship has always been part of the power dynamics. Fine. Now comes the question: as a researcher who is exposed to, more layers of this problem. Now, the world has moved out of the churches, and we are living in a democratic era. How do you look at this phenomenon? Do you find that the same era of power dynamics continues, where there is an effort on the part of dominant voices to suppress the marginal voices or the voices of protest?
Okay, sir. Sir, to a certain extent, we have discussed this in the final chapter about the issue of strategic selectivity. Considering, and we have to consider the immensity of the Indian population and the complexity of its problems. So it has to be, it has to be in a state of conflict, and it has to be an attempt to gain not hegemonic position, but a position of political influence. So in that sense, the chapter 4 that talks about the organic intellectuals who derive strength from within their own space and gain a prominent position in their own group of people or their own community of people, they will be able to signify what is missing and what is required and how certain sections of our society, Indian society, that is not being taken seriously, maybe taken seriously. So that an organic intellectuals rise to a position of voicing their opinion, and then a conflict with other major forces that are trying to gain the same position, leading to a strategic selectivity by the state. Whatever is best suited, who is best able to represent themselves. This is the democracy problems. And while the state intends to address them all, it has to, help those who need it more than the others. So this is the way forward through an intellectual, rise of the organic intellectual and a strategic selection. There is also at a point where certain compromise has to be made. Now, even if one is not strategically selected, there is a position where they have come to be recognized, and that itself actually gains space for future options. So that is the beauty of democracy, that despite its problems, there's a chance that every element, every person or every community will get. So I think this is the way we can look at it. And in addition to that, sir, there are certain policy methods, measures that have been suggested and have not to this day been taken very seriously. Many times these suggestions across 50 years have been made, right from 1960s when I talked about the Mubaya case in Allahabad, to the Chief F. Kamal Selvam case. Suggestions have been made to ensure that there is freedom in literature, but perhaps literature has not been taken seriously in the political sense in India. We take it very aesthetically. We do give it a lot of regard, but the politics of it is that is not being taken that seriously at the governmental level. So that perhaps is another resolution to the problem. There's also a greater signification on the digital aspects that are only proliferating further, and the presence of social media, and also perhaps an emphasis, if I may say, as an assistant professor myself, that on the part of professors, we need to create a space where critical thinking is possible, and just like 100-word Twitter announcement is not the be-all and the end-all of information about something. So these are some of the solutions through which we can still see the democracy going, despite its challenges.
Priyam, as literature, as intellectuals, I believe we are not supposed to provide solutions, because there cannot be ready-made solutions to these problems. At the most, what we can do is problematize it, give food for thought. Again, talking about democracy and hegemony, well, the moment we talk about hegemony, we are talking about power shift and power shifting with certain sections of society. That means undermining the other sections of the society. So obviously there are inherent contradictions when we talk about democracy and hegemony at the same time. You see, when we look at the Indian society, and we are always proud of our cultural heritage, and we are also quite conscious in protecting our cultural values. Now, do you look at cultural values as hegemonic? And, because of them, we don't, approve of a certain kind of discourse or a certain kind of representation, and we feel like banning those books or those literatures, because we believe that they will be damaging to our moral fabric. So how do you look at this phenomenon? Because we call ourselves democracy means everything is welcome. But then
Yes.
we are talking about being selective, strategic. They all imply some kind of policy decision that is based on inclusion and exclusion policy. Fine. So how do you react to that?
Yes, sir. So, if I may just quote the Professor Dr. Upendra Bakshi that I heard recently, and I take in absolutely the right spirit, sir, that it becomes a question of exclusion and inclusion when we think about selectivity. So that's a point very well taken. So in a democracy, that kind of a choice should not ideally be present. It should be about inclusivity only. But then there are certain compromises that needs to be made. So only to that extent, I would say that a selectivity would be required. But otherwise, as you say, it is true, it has to be more inclusive. Now, the question about whether certain cultural values could be allocated as a hegemonic position. Well, no. So Professor Upendra Bakshi talked about failing better about trying to compare. So in fact, in my text also, in my thesis also, I write about the Kenyan critic Ali Murzai, who talks about how the world is trying to protect the book Satanic Verses, but what they are not realizing is that this is the world English world language in which the writer is writing, and is not giving it plausible level, proper level of engagement and respect and regard. And the writer needs to realize that in a position where he is in such a he's a prominent writer and is being globally read, he also has a certain level of responsibility. If the reader has a responsibility, the writer also has a certain level of responsibility. And so he's kind of raising this issue of cultural hegemony here only through his critique of the text. He's saying you cannot say just because he's an English writer, speaker, globally recognized, that he is correct, that he needs to be protected. If such a huge population of the world is objecting to it, there are certain sentiments that need to be taken seriously. So, no, cultural values cannot be hegemonic, and they must be given their own place. There should be a dialogue, there should be dissent. All that is possible. The only problem, let's say, in terms of Satanic Verses, was that the fatwa was issued against him. So you just go ahead and start killing someone, or you issue an order to do that, or there are a lot of outbursts on the streets trying to burn the books, and like in Perumal Murugan's case, this order that if you do not give an unconditional apology, we will not let you stay here, burn the books. The matter went to court, and various other places. So it's no, cultural answer is absolutely no, it is not hegemonic. It needs to be recognized, debated, dissented, but it should not descend into violence. That's all I'd like to say. And we can fail better in the attempt, as Upendra Bakshi sir said, fail better in the attempt to compare and try to reach an equilibrium with regard to these questions.
Okay. See, on the one hand, Salman Rushdie was issued a fatwa, but then in India, M.F. Hussain, he projected goddess Saraswati as naked and vulnerable, and still there was no sanction against him. So heresy, and again heresy. How do you look at this word heresy? I mean, is it always negative, or it's welcome also?
It has a negative connotation, sir, no doubt about it. It has a transformational aspect to it. Like the final chapter has discussed, that it has begun with something, heresy being defined as something blasphemous, to something becoming culturally unpalatable. So it has a transformational nature to it, but it has a negative connotation, and only in the sense that the society is not able to align with it. They're not able to compromise with it. They're not able to align with it. Somewhere their materiality of sentiments is evoked. There is a response. There is a sense of disturbance that they feel. And ultimately, law and order should prevail. So should freedom of speech. But again, that difficult, equilibrium requires to be reached. So it has a negative connotation, I would say.
Yeah, otherwise there will be no progress, actually. You continue to be conformist all the time. Non-conforming is not always a crime, actually.
Thank you, sir. That's a brilliant point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. So Fine. Finally, Priyam, now we have entered a different era altogether, which is marked by sophisticated technology. And again, it's problematic now, because we are not talking about the traditional books that can be easily banned or something, because now the narratives are everywhere in the virtual space. So, do you still think that this strategy of banning some kind of literature that is considered derogatory or uh, you know uh, uh, hurting the sentiment of the people and has the potential to cause some kind of damage? I mean, will this policy of banning books work in the current scenario?
Actually, we can see that it's to a certain extent it's at the wane end. So the last text of the discussion of my thesis is on the Adivasi Cannot Dance. That's the latest book in the set of books I have taken, and it was just a 4 month ban. And there was a discussion. There was a lot of discussion actually, but ultimately the ban was easily removed. So this is a complex question that needs to be explored. The book is going to be available despite the ban. That's a point that's well taken. Whether through piracy, whether through some other means, but the books are more or less available in some form in the virtual world, and people are more interested in reading. Maybe it could have a Streisand effect, if I may say so. So the reason why something becomes more popular because it has created certain level of objections, which has happened with all of these texts. They have gained far more readership as a result of the unpopularity that they have faced. So at least that would veer our population into reading maybe about something. But the question about whether this is still going to create a disruption, as long as, sir, we are in the stage of discussion, whether it be the virtual or the physical world, we largely everything is moving to the virtual world. So that discussion does not end, whether it be in the physical or in the virtual. So I would believe that this would go on, but it is not possible. Theoretically, it is not possible to ban the book. Even if it is done, it is available. Even if it's done, it's available. Like scientific verses is still banned as per the very recent 2024 petition of Sandeepan Khan, where they could not find the court order that had, not the court order, the ministry order that had banned the book. They couldn't find it. And the petition was termed infructuous. And yet we know, so basically it's still banned in India, but it is available in India virtually. So it is up for discussion. It is up for engagement. So. And it would still be a point of contention wherever it needs to be, depending on the level of readership and also the different technologies we adapt, like distant readings. It will take some time for sure, because I think it will take about 20 years for us to be acclimatized to such a new concept, because readership is not going in the right direction.
Okay, fine. So, Priyam, I am done. Now it is open to other people present in your Viva. Thank you very much for your.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm truly honored for your questions and your input and insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nagendra Kumar, for your very insightful questions and your observations. Now I request the supervisor, Dr. D.N. Sinha, to put questions to his research candidate.
I think she has presented well, and from my side, very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request the faculty members, Professor Arjun Kumar, Dr. Vibhash Ranjan, and Dr. Ramjit Chaupal to put questions to Priyam Singh.
Good afternoon, all of you. Respected parents, permanent faculty, guest faculty, APS college, and dear students of second and fourth semester. Actually, this title has three profound words. The first is heresy, reception, and hegemony. In course of her speech, she has pointed out and referred 3 to 4 times the name of satanic verses and twice the name of Adivasi will not dance. Well, we live in AI's world. We live also in post-humanistic era where the things have been completely transformed. And when we consider satanic verses as a literary text, well, the whole world will be stunned to know the kind of profound meaning that this text contains. But irony contains here that particular people who are of the same religion, they come forward and they resisted the way it was presented. Well, those people have nothing to do with the literary significance and aestheticism of the text. And when we literary learners of literature approach this text, we find that their approach, their response, their resistance does not hold much meaning, because we people know how a word, how a syntax, how semantic work in order to transport the meaning to us, and how that meaning becomes so significant in the contemporary times. Look at here that Salman Rushdie, he started writing with a pen, and finally he came to the knife, the text. Yes? So this is the reward that a man of resistance has held. Another point that I kept in my mind, that Adivasi will not dance. Again, I like all of you to read, because here it is a text about resistance. And we people nowadays are taking this contemporary word in order to derive a diverse meanings out of resistance and out of such text. Here, when we talk of sovereignty at this point of time, there are many students sitting here, and they know that how this sovereignty has been challenged every day. Because we talk of sovereignty, we talk of freedom, and we know at the end of the day, there is not seen, yes, neither word nor its implication. Yes, so hegemony, in fact, whether it is religious, it is political, or in some cases, because she has referred that hegemony also works on the different strata of classes. Yes, because we belong to a country where Manusmriti was written, And if you read few pages, then you know that how even to this point of time, it exercised its strategic manipulation, keeping in mind only a handful of people, how they could be in better position or how they could be politically stronger. So, yeah, the thing that I like to answer that this hegemony, whether it is political, social, or religious, it is not just found in our slang. There are many occasions where, on the micro level, it is invisible and the people are practicing it. Yes, we have talked of mature leadership and immature leadership. Well, it is a very common thing that if a religious people is handed over the text, any poem of P.H.D. or William Shakespeare's sonnet, he will not interpret it in the way we people understand. He will definitely put his hegemony of the spirituality or the religion to which we belong to. So it all depends upon the leadership, and finally it all depends on the human culture. Our culture is diversified. It is known to all because she has mentioned that Ramayana is not just one Ramayana. Yes, there is one Ramayana written by someone in Himachal Pradesh, and there it was mentioned that Sita was the daughter of Ravan. And the fight took place because this Lord Rama married Sita without the consent of Ravana. So this is why it is important, why it needs its interpretation, or why it needs a kind of mentoring in this religious book. Because we belong to a world where diversities are many and they are multifaceted. So considering this diversity, don't you think that the hegemony day by day, yes, hour by hour, it is more oppressive, or in other words, in a very gentle words, it is gaining its momentum day by day. Is there any strategy? Is there any idea, because you have worked upon it, and is there any way that you wish to communicate to the people sitting over here? Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, indeed, sir. As the title of my thesis says, it's an interplay between heresy and hegemony. This interplay is for a specific reason. It cannot end. It is going to be a state of play. It's almost Darwinian in that sense. That there is no fixity to this aspect. It will always be. The other point is of how Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, talks about the concept of a critical intellectual. Who will have intellectual? So everybody can think that a critical intellectual is somebody who thinks about the privilege of their class, introspects about the privilege of their class, and based on their motivations then works towards the most equitable society. So Chomsky's concept of critical intellectual can be one answer. The fact that there is always an interplay, and it is a complex interplay, no doubt, as you point out. This play will always go on, and there will be no victory for anyone. Nobody can supersede the others. It's almost like Voldemort, if I may say so, in Harry Potter. Neither can live while the other survives. So it's going to be an interplay. It's always going to continue. And there is going to be the role of the critical intellectual, and there's going to be the role of the oppressive people. But I can say with a great sense of optimism that technology, with all its discrepancies and difficulties, also brings in a lot of transparency. And it is not so easy. And it also, we have progressed in 75 years of our independence. We just talk about India. We have definitely progressed. I agree with you completely that there is going to be an underlying undercurrent space where an initiative to underplay it is going to be there. But it cannot ever completely succeed. It's going to be an interplay, and the critical intellectual needs to play a part in it. Technology can play a part in it, and self-introspection, artists, writers, humanities students, and professors are the ones who are going to make a big change. Always have, always been looked down upon, and down in the sense that not that important. STEM fields are very important, but eventually, unless we pay attention to the humanities, STEM is not going to survive. So our role is just as important as artists, as facilitators of this knowledge. And that's why I take your point also in great spirit, in good spirit, and agree with you. But so, as I said, to play and the introspective role of critical intellectual. That would be my answer to this.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
We are living in the realm of AI, where much comfort has been generated by the use of AI. So if you are given this privilege to use AI, do you think that deception, hegemony, yes, and heresy will get down, or you think that it will remain at its position?
In fact, sir, it may actually enhance. Because I did a paper on Internet of Things.
You have mentioned it that it will enhance. Now tell me that hegemony will be more enhanced than the other two. What is your
Yes, hegemony will enhance more.
More.
And that is why human beings are never going to be outdated. They need to always pitch in and point out the issues we already do. So if we understand this right, because I read about this and such an interesting concept, not my own, of course. So it says that a very small section of the world that contains engineers who write the algorithmic code, they are the ones who get the answers to you. We see it as simple script that is readable to us, but they are the ones who are writing the codes. They are the dictators. There is no law. There is no law that is regulating them as of now. They are just being given great pay and being looked upon as wonderful professionals. But they are the regulators at the present moment, and there has to be a sense of protection that the government can look into. But as of now, there's not even the right to privacy considered. So that concept of looking at the algorithmic play and control of text is very deep. And that is why digital humanities with all its business can also be a lot of problems. So along with all these, we need to look at that factor. So that is why it can get enhanced. But then again, human beings, at least as of now, we have not lost our intellect, our ability to think and to critique. And I think we can always take a view. We have always created by any other. So, yes, enhancement technologies, they are there. They are not there yet.
Yeah. Excuse me, I have some other engagement. If you would like to continue, please continue.
देखिए नरेंद्र सर कुछ बोल रहा है।
Dr. Nagendra sir, would you like to say something, sir? If you wish.
Yeah, ma'am, I have some other engagement. So if you want to continue, you can continue. I would like to continue.
Vera. All right. Ma'am, I think we failed. And we wish to continue with it. So any other questions?
Sir, I know your time is very precious, Professor Nagendra Kumar. Uh, we would, I mean, there are a few questions that the students would also like to put. But before that, I request you to congratulate Priyam Singh on her successful defense of her thesis.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with her answers, and I'd like to congratulate her and her guide for this beautiful piece of work. It's very meaningful intervention, a very timely intervention, in fact. So, congratulations, Priyam, and it was a pleasure reading your thesis. And my regards to Professor Arjun Kumar as well. Always enlightening listening to him and his comments, and other colleagues. So, ma'am, with your permission, I congratulate her, and please allow me to leave. Thank you.
Professor Nagendra, Professor Nagendra, Professor Nagendra. Good afternoon, very good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. You are not audible. Probably you have been muted.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Now I request the other faculty members, Dr. Vibhas Ranjan and...
What is the scope of the
In a state where there is one it is possible. It is possible, so because of the nature of change that policy has now required. So it is no longer just a question of religion. And even in religion, there are so many identity barriers. So even in that one concept, like Sir mentioned, I would say that people from the Muslim community actually object to the writing of something belongs to that people. So, there are different levels of exposure that different set of people have all point each are equally important. But because it is different, there is always going to be a certain level of content. I would say that whether in terms of culture or in terms of some religious ideas, and even in religion, I think again the Ramayana there's so many other settings of the text. Similarly, for everything, for many other texts, there are similar settings. So one can never be sure what's Our political parties have IT cells, and we often hear of a sense of great disregard. The IT cell of this particular party, the IT cell of that, and they have very concentrated effort towards propagating a particular ideology. Much more than what normal people usually do. In fact, sometimes they are the one who elicit this idea. And in my historical reading of self-check, the first time around I said it was steps. Ph.D. Was very clear in the Maldika Maheshwaran book, Art, Offense, Violence, and Friends Living in India. He clearly states in the interview that he would sit and look for opportunities where he could create this kind of conflict, and we would take it to a party where we decide what we do. So this has actually been advocated at certain places. Some places it is not useful, but we can understand that there is so much of a possibility. We have to understand.
So, in the context of Indian constitutional right granted under Article 19(1)(a), that is freedom of expression, don't you think that this heresy needs to be redefined in the context of that particular right which is granted to Indian citizens?
The
On the one hand, the Constitution has granted the right that whatever one feels, he or she has the right to express the same. But on the other hand, we have the definition of heresy. So how the two things can walk together?
freedom of right.
Either you don't grant me freedom, or you don't say what I say is heresy.
Actually, sir, you raise a very important question discussing amplified, where the ethos between the conservative and the liberal ideas is discussed. When it's said that, um, you know, when liberals talk about the freedom of speech, they forget about certain elements. They also try to restrict some things. They say you shouldn't say something like this. You shouldn't speak against women in a particular manner. So they have raised the conservative rhetoric has raised this issue. And they have said that when you're talking about complete freedom, there should be complete freedom. But again, this is a rhetoric, this is a dialogue that is going on between two sets of ideologies. And at the present moment, the conservative side seems to be winning. Because the liberals are too content with their own ideas. They are not engaging, whereas the conservative are engaging and they're ensuring that their time is put across. So this is a rhetoric going on. So yes, sir, the complete freedom, the right that it should be freedom at both ends.
Thank you. That's all from my side.
Priyam, from the view of research, how do you see the work of Walt Whitman, The Leaves of Grass, which was, protested by various, groups, like, in 1882, the New England Watch and Ward Society, you know. So, in 1882, the New England Watch and Ward Society protested against it. And
what are the facilities they lack, the poverty and the deprivation that they feel. In fact, in the assessment of the book, it is realized that the actual women upon which reason of offense the book was banned are not even aware that something has been written against them. So in the sense that a writer is writing, and also it's very, very important that Hansda Shekhar, he was asked to remove, like the text that Sir was talking about, where the artist, the poet said that I'm not going to remove it. Similarly, Hansda Shekhar said that I'm not going to remove it. I am an Adivasi and I am aware of how the life of Adivasis stay, and you cannot ask me to remove. That is inflicting or encroaching upon my freedom of speech, and the element of truth is going to be diluted if I do not write it as it is. So that is one text that is an example that is challenging the dominant narrative about the tribals. We generally, when we think about tribals, we think about something primordial and primitive. But actually, there's so many that I think, because in the state of Bihar and Jharkhand, we are aware, who study with us, who do very well, etc. And then there are those sections that face this kind of deprivation. So showing the truth, showing the reality is an act of resistance, and staying with the reality is an even bigger one. So that's just one text reflecting, hegemonic challenges. All the other texts are also doing the same by taking a stand for their points of view. Thank you. Any other question? Yes. Good afternoon.
We are so much involved in posting our religion on social media platforms, following religious debates. And on the other hand, we are not reading any religious text our outfit. Even we are not touching it, and we are not getting anything. Do you think that this is giving allow it to an agency having hegemony over us, over our text?
Thank you, Satvik. That's a very good point. And that's a point that I asked also in context to Wendy Doniger's text. And the people who answered or rather the people who actually attempted the survey questioning were from Sanskrit Vishwavidyalays in our country. So you raised the question about whether the lack of our own education makes us subject to a hegemonic presence, and you are right. So they say that we are capable enough to study our own text and to contest the ideas, let's say people like Doniger and Martha Nussbaum and others in the United States from divinity schools talk about. We are better equipped to answer, and yet we do not have the depth. Okay, we don't know our Sanskrit text just as well, and therefore this idea that New Education Policy 2020 actually talks about a three language structure in the schools. We must pay attention to our languages. If any language dies or is on the verge of unfamiliarity in a land which is its own, then they're losing out quite a lot. It's a kind of doing away with human rights, and you are allowing hegemonic forces to come in, right? So I agree with you that not knowing our texts, religious or otherwise, not knowing our language properly, will lead us to be subjected to these kinds of hegemonic violence. So that's an area that government has put up. It is up to us whether we indulge in it. In fact, there are funds for, unfortunately in our country, there is less funding for the languages and even less funding for Sanskrit. I mean, just for an example. And if you go to Germany, there is such a good funding available for research in Sanskrit. So perhaps our government should also pay attention to that and not just talk about the religious ideals, but actually inculcate it through our state apparatus like the school.
So I absolutely agree with you. We have very little knowledge of our own religious texts.
Any other question? Okay.
Satvik, yes, it is just a kind of addition from my side because we belong to a country where religions are many and at the same time castes are many, and castes are always placed above the religion. You have a very right observation that nowadays people have become very sensitive to put their religious identity on WhatsApp. Here, there is a mindset. We also belong to a land where the modern architect of our country and a great scholar, and his name, in fact, is considered among the 10 global intellectuals, and he was Dr. Bhimrao Baba Ambedkar Sahab. And he wrote a text, Annihilation of Caste. Well, who are the readers who do not like to read such text? Again, this is not based upon the religion. This is not based upon the caste. It is based upon the culture of our country. The same thing we could interpret in a different way, that we people are so divided that we derive that, yes, Prem Chand could have born to this part of the world or to that part of UP, still today. But English people never raise a question that William Shakespeare was born to this corner of England or to that corner of England. Yes, we people doubt our nationality. We do not talk in full freedom that, yes, these are the religions which are adopted by the citizens of our country. These are the castes who are living in this country. Why it is so that whenever the religious matters come, even the best speaker, the good intellectuals, the educated people, you may have faced many times, you have seen with your own eyes that they lower their voice in the full view of the public. Why? This is a threat. This is a constant threat. This is a hegemony because here students are sitting and they are well acquainted what has happened in Prophet Song, though the title is very religious, Prophet Song. So we honor Kabir, and we honor Kabir, and we all know the controversy has been generated that Kabir would have been born here or could have been born here. But it is Kabir, a great sage of our soil, who has mentioned that I don't know the caste to which I belong. Yes, so there are many things which we know, but we do not like to present, we do not like to advocate. And why? Because hegemony is always acting as a surveillance. Yes, even though there is nothing, but we do not prefer, we do not like to take his or her name because of the strife, which could be immediately generated the moment we talk. We all are teachers here. Yes, and whenever, even though the top administrator sitting and running the office, yes, he is doing something not in the interest of the academia. Well, we do not think to raise our voice. Yes, so we are living in a world where we have become very, very selective, which is more suitable for me. that may guarantee my academic prosperity, my economic safety, and my physical safety as well. Yes, so we have to be very, very careful. Yes, kuch bhi, whatever you think, yes, it has a meaning. That has a great meaning when it transgresses the subjectivity and attains the objectivity. Yes, so things were in the past, things are here, yes, and things will be in future. The AI was not there in the past. AI is here. And there are many things that we Google and things would come. You may find when you read the same thing in the text written by an authentic writer, you find that whatever is there on the Google page is not corresponding to the written material of an authentic writer. So just see, here she has talked of mature readership and immature readership. Well, where is the line between mature and immature readership? Whom do we call mature and whom do we call immature? It depends totally on the wisdom, on the intellect. And this wisdom and intellect does not come in a day. It is a cultivation and it will take decade. In some cases, it will take a year. So whatever is taking place, it is better that we should be vigilant, we should be active, and we should always fix our eyes on the goal. That's it.
So now we come to the end of this session. There are only 1 or 2 points that I'm very short. Number one, this dialogue, as she said, between heresy and hegemony always continues. It has continued. So there was once upon a time, it was heretical to say that the sun, that the earth revolves around the sun. So Galileo was persecuted and prosecuted for that. So after that, you won't believe, it is Hemingway who says that Huckleberry Finn is one of the greatest novels, American novels written. And in fact, he said that he has taken inspiration from it. But when it was published, actually it was removed from American libraries. There you have the hegemonic control. Why? Because they felt that it was not fit for children to read, their language was abusive, etc. So I feel, this is what I feel that, and of course, Lady Chatterley's Lover was banned because it was considered to be obscene. No one will think that it is obscene today because a whole lot of, novels or works of that kind are now being published. So what I want to say is that ideology and the narrative, the dominant narrative that controls your thoughts and beliefs, decides which text or what is to be considered as heretical. And accordingly, the hegemonic control works. So as, times change and new knowledge, for instance, in the case of Galileo, when scientific knowledge was gained that, yes, what he said was true, naturally people accept it and they move forward. So this dialogue definitely will continue, but what is considered to be heretical and the hegemonic control, this heretical will definitely change, but hegemonic control on what is considered to be heresy at that particular point of time will remain. This is what I feel. So now we come to the end of the session. All the students are requested to remain seated. And the second semester, you will have your CIA from 2 o'clock. A very hearty congratulations to Priyam Singh. That was a very good defense. I think one of the best, very informed defense of the thesis. I congratulate the supervisor, Professor D.S.
See, you should get your horizon. Don't remain confined to your own literature that you have selected. Expand your horizon. Yeah. Just. I export a photo.
Thank you.